reason why we bless Ephraim and Manasseh on Friday night is because Ephraim and Manasseh managed to overcome the emotional difficulties at the time when there was a legitimate reason for them to have emotional difficulties, to be jealous, to be haughty against one another. Yet they managed to overcome that and deal with it and still stay the same people. That is the reason why we give the blessing specifically of Ephraim and Manasseh to our children on Friday night, because we want them to be emotionally healthy. And that's the blessing. The reason I want them to be emotionally healthy is because we live in our emotions. We do not live on our intellect. This has been approved also by the scientists, where they have recognized EQ, being emotional intelligence, being something which actually leads to success of the person much more than IQ. Now, there are three things that we are affected by every day. There's nurture, right? Let me explain nurture. Nurture is the following idea. My wife's from Australia. When I go to Australia, I fly through Hong Kong, right? Hong Kong is an incredible place. It's a beautiful place. It's amazing. The first time I went there, it's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable place. However, there are no kids. The whole country, beautiful cars. There are nearly no kids. I'm going with my 5 kids, with my sister-in-law with 3 kids, and my cousin with 5 kids. We walk onto a bus. 3 strollers, 15 kids, and 6 adults. That's a school, right? We get on, and suddenly, the whole bus, so we get on, we're trying to, be our little selves, So we go on the bus, suddenly, the whole bus gets up, and they start going, and they're sitting there, and suddenly they take the babies, and they take the kids, and they get off. My wife, it was brilliant. And then suddenly they taking photos. I'm saying, what in the world's going on over here? And they're saying, take photo? Yeah. I said, well, this is noise. She goes, yeah, take a photo. They're sitting down in the bus, and they're taking photos the whole bus journey. We went to we had to stop over for 10 hours. We went to the ocean theme park. Amazing place. It's unbelievable to do a log ride in the middle of a mountain. Unbelievable place. However, I was we walked on there, and everyone's making a whole thing about it. We were sitting in the airport. So again, with me and my sister and my cousin, there's 10 kids, 15 kids, whatever it is, just sitting down, eating lunch, whatever, sandwiches. As people walk past, literally, they walk past, and they say this, take photo, and they just, one after the other, taking photos. We're celebrities in Hong Kong, right? And to prove the point, when I was in Australia, this was I'm on Bondi Beach, and my wife is with the kids in the front, and I'm over here holding the baby like this. There's no one on the beach. It's wintertime. There's no one on the beach. Me, my wife, and if you know Bondi Beach, it's a huge sand area, right? It's a surface paradise. It's a huge sand area. It's an incredible place. I see a couple walking towards me with their daughter, Chinese couple walking towards me. And when I walk, I mean walking towards me, like this. In England, you do that in England, I don't know, and then it happens in London, you start backing off, you start finding places of escape. Don't walk to something like that, it's threatening, you know what I mean? And they're going at it. They're going straight towards it. I look behind, there's no one on the beach. So what do people want from me, right? At the same time, my wife comes back. And they're coming towards me like this, and I'm like, okay, the man's 60, I can take him down if he's a karate expert. The woman I don't know, the lady in the middle, I don't know, we can do something about it, right? And they're coming towards me, and they meet me at the same time. And they walk up to me and they go, hold baby? And I said, no. Do you not hear the thing, don't talk to strangers? And my wife goes, give it to her. I said, you know these people? I said, she goes, no, this is what happens here. They took my baby, they played on the beach with my baby for 10 minutes, and then said, thank you, and walked off. I said, wife, what's going on? She goes, it happens the whole time. I said, why? She said, because they can't have kids. Because they're Chinese, you can't have kids in China. I said, but they live in Australia, you can have kids here. She goes, they've been nurtured that way. It doesn't enter their heads. If you're going to walk up to somebody and ask them to have their baby, take a photo with, have a child. Let's talk about it. Sit down, get married, have a child. You obviously like children, right? But it's the nurture, it's the way the mind works. Another idea is the following, where my Rabbi told me that a guy walked up to him. He had a kid in his class, whatever, in his yeshiva. And this guy hated his father with a passion. It was like the stuff that came out of his mouth, what did his father do already? You know what I mean? And as they're talking more and more, he realizes his father is a big miser, and very, very stingy. And anytime you get money out of him, it's like blood out of a stone. Right? And it really bothered him. Growing up in America, it's like money's a big issue. He had the money, you're just making my life difficult for no reason. And he started to build up a hate and anger against him and resentment. Resentment leads to hate. Hate leads to a lot of other good things, right? So he's talking to him. And immediately says, when was your father born? He says, my father was born in 1922. He goes, don't you get it? He went through the Great Depression of 1929. So have you ever spoken to your father about it? So he says, no. He goes, next time speak to your father about it. So next time he comes back, he goes, I spoke to my father about it. He goes, what did he say? He said, my father said that his father had loads of money stacked up. And he said, and he lost everything overnight, and we starved. We starved for 3 years. My father was on a job. He lost everything he had. And that's why I learned, you never have enough money, because you can lose it all. So he said to his kid, you don't realize your father's been nurtured from the age of 8. However much money he has, it's never enough. To you, it's enough because you were never brought up in 1929. To me, he's got $1 million in the bank. You can lose it like that. Gone in a second. It's a nurture. It's the way his brain's been trained to think. So these things of nurture are easier for us to understand. And we know that, we can work through it. We can deal with it. Life coaches, psychologists, nowadays it's rampant. Everyone knows we can, right? Simple. But very often when it comes to nature, which is what we're going to discuss, people say, but that's the way I am. I can't change myself. And this is where Judaism begs to differ. Because Judaism says the following. There are 10 powers of the soul, right? Each of these powers is not good or bad. It's just a power. God created the world with 10 powers. 10 esesfirot, if anyone recognizes that. 10 powers, whatever that means, I don't know. I'm not a Kabbalist. I do not know what that means. But that's what it says. But God created our human being, because it's a small world, we also have the same 10 powers. Those 10 powers are split into 3 triangles. You have a triangle like this, one under the other, right? 3 triangles. The first triangle is called the intellectual triangle, right? The intellectual triangle, which I'm not going to go into now because I deal with more emotions. Intellectual is a whole different thing. There's chokhmah on the right, which means wisdom, and bina on the left, which means understanding. And the middle is called das, which is knowledge. It doesn't mean any of those things, right? Just so you understand quickly, chokhmah is the creative idea in the spark of an idea. You've ever had a problem and you're going like this and you go, got it. But it's not a logical thing, it just hits you in the head? That's chokhmah, right? Bina is taking that spark and making it real. Women have an extra dose of bina, right? Bina, though, is a woman's thing. Why? Because bina means to build. The chokhmah is the idea, the spark, the idea. And bina is taking that idea and bringing it down into the real world, reality. A woman is in the physical world as well. She takes the spark and she builds it into a real thing, into her baby, right? The man is always the creative idea. That's why men love playing with little toys. However old they are, you give them a little technology and they're sitting there playing, and a woman goes like, what the heck are you doing that thing? You buy a helicopter for your kid and you're playing with it yourself. Right? All men created, and women are going, it was bought for the kids, right? Because men are chokhmah people. They like the creativity, the difference, the technology. Women don't like creativity. Give me something real. I want to build something real. I want to build something.
Is that what they like, reality shows?
Definitely more than men. Men, It's not bad or good. It's not bad or good. Generally speaking, this is the way it is with men and women. It just happens to be that way. You can have a woman who happens to be not like that. Or men not like that. You get men who are very feminine, right? And you get women who are very masculine. It's just the way it happens to be, the way it happens to go. It doesn't have to be this way. In truth, you have to have all 3. Right? You have to have the creativity idea and you have to have the bina idea. The Torah says that women were given an extra dose of bina. That's definite. Women get things. Right? Men don't get them. Right? Women can build things from a spark and build it up to a binyan, to a building. Right? That's the intellectual part anyway. Not getting into that. But you have next the emotional triangle. And that's the next 3, which is chesed, gevurah, and teferes. Now, before we start this whole thing, we have to understand 2 things. There's a big difference between the intellectual and the emotional. Some people have orientation to the intellectual triangle, and some people have an orientation to the emotional triangle, right? So, in the Kabbalah, in the mystics, it says the following. Intellect is called ayin, nothingness. And the emotion is called yesh, something. Why would that be? I'm going to suggest something. Why would we call the intellect nothing? Without intellect, we can't do anything. Right? Without intellect, we can't think. Right? It's true that we live in our emotion, right? A baby is born with emotions because we are our emotions. When you understand someone's emotions, you understand that person. When you understand his intellect, you don't understand nothing. Everyone see that? If you know somebody's emotional makeup, you pretty much got the whole guy or girl, whatever it is, right? If you understand his intellectual capabilities, what do you know? You know how good he can do mathematics or how good he can think. You don't know anything about the person, right? But still, to call intellect nothing is a bit extreme. Why would intellect be called nothing? You understand the question? And the mystics say it specifically. They say intellect is called nothing and emotion is called something. And the answer is the following, because the intellect has nothing to do with me. Again, intellect and emotion does not mean your intelligence. It doesn't mean how clever you are. It doesn't mean how you can. It means how you see the world. How do you experience the world? I'll give you an example. If, let's say, you see a Ferrari, and if I see a Ferrari, or a bunch of guys see a Ferrari F550, and it's going 300 miles an hour, and goes straight up and goes, whoa, Ferrari. And then you see, bang, into a wall. And he goes, that's a Ferrari that just blew up, right? That's the intellect. The emotion says, there's a guy in there, right? The intellect sees the facts. The emotion doesn't see the fact, right? When you're dealing with somebody, I'll give another example. When you're dealing with a man and woman, a relationship between a man and woman and a spouse, right? So the woman comes home and is upset. Now, generally speaking, again, this is generally speaking, but generally speaking, men have a more orientation towards the intellect and women more towards emotion. Not because women are stupid, but because we experience life through the intellect, right? So a wife comes home and she's upset and she's crying, whatever it may be, because of work or because someone upset her, right? What does the guy naturally do?
Ask what's wrong.
Ask her what's wrong, right? And when she says what's wrong, she goes, I hate my job and my boss is annoying me, doesn't appreciate me, and I just want to leave. So what does the guy do?
Says it's a silly idea.
No, all that. What he says, so leave, right? Do you think the woman doesn't know she can leave her job? She knows she can leave her job. She got the job, she's intellectual enough to get the job, she knows she can leave the job. She doesn't want you to give a solution. Men think of solutions. So they intellect. Facts. You have a problem. You have a problem with your job. You're upset about your job. So leave your job. Point closed. Conversation closed. Right? Women are not talking to you about that. They know that as well. They want to be heard. That's all. She can work it out herself if she wants to leave or not. She wants to tell you, to appreciate. She's going through a hard time. That's all. That's the whole thing. Right? Because they're more emotionally based. Right? They see things through emotion, through things. They experience the world through people. I tell a guy, for instance, an age. A guy come to me once an age, a student of mine, and he says, he went to Ben Yehuda and he got a girl, and he told me how he conned the whole girl into thinking. I said, listen, sunshine, if you think you conned the girl, start the whole thing all over again. You walked in there within 3 minutes, she knew exactly what you were, right? Because she's a girl, she knows that these things. Right? You think you conned her because you don't understand, but she gets him much more than you do, right? Because they're more into people. They understand people, right? So the Kabbalah says that intellect is called ayin, nothingness, and yesh is emotions. The emotions not only doesn't need to have anything to do with the facts, it has nothing to do with the facts. An example, when I was flying to Switzerland, from Switzerland to Tel Aviv, so we took off, and there was a time when there were a lot of, there was a thunderstorm here, there was a thunderstorm. So they said, listen, when we take off, there's going to be a bit of turbulence. Okay, fine, there'll be turbulence, we're cool. In middle, after 1.5 hours, they say there's going to be wind directional changes. I don't know what wind directional changes are. Probably neither did anyone else. But when I see the stewardess running towards the back to strap herself in, I know this is not going to be good, right? Wind directional changes is wind directional changes. That's what it means. And the plane literally moved from side to side. I don't like being in a tin can shaking around at best of times. But like that, it was not a nice time. It wasn't a nice time. Next to me, in the front of me over here, there's a lady, maybe 65-year-old lady, and she went white. I could appreciate her going white, let me tell you. And a person's trying to comfort her and say, there's no problem, it's only turbulence, and nothing can really happen, and stuff like that. If he would turn around to her and say like the following, what are you scared of? So I'm scared of dying, right? So if he says to her, look, statistically speaking, more people die on the roads in Europe every year than in all the planes of the whole world. In fact, statistically speaking, more people die in Israel, or not, Malaysian Airlines, not anymore now. But more people die in Europe, definitely, than not, right? So, what are you scared of? Is that going to help her? Is that going to help this person calm down? Why not? You're scared of dying? I'm telling you, you're not going to die. Don't worry, chill. It's fine. Why doesn't it work? You have a fear. You have a logical fear. A legitimate fear, a logical fear, right? You're scared, the plane's shaking, it could fall out of the sky, whatever it may be. I'm scared of dying. So that's a legitimate fear. So I'm telling you now, it's not going to happen. Statistically speaking, it's not going to happen. A plane has never fallen out of the sky because of turbulence. Never. At least big ones. I don't know about little ones. At least big ones, right? So you have a fear. I've now addressed that problem. Why are you still scared? Why are you scared?
She's not connected to the Chumash, with the emotion, with the intellect.
So what? Exactly.
She won't
It's not.
understand what you are saying.
She will understand. She's not stupid. She'll understand. It doesn't speak to her. Why not? Because when you're dealing with the emotion, it has nothing to do with the facts. The facts have no share. What's it to do with the facts? I'm scared. Oh, if you tell me you should, I'm scared. That's how I feel. Very often we do this with our kids. Our kids come home and we say, oh, you're scared about something, or you're upset about something. Or again, it could be a spouse, where it's a husband or a wife, and they're upset about something, and you don't think that's a legitimate reason to be scared. There's no such thing. This is the way I'm feeling. If I feel this way, it's legitimate. If I'm doing the facts, you might think it's stupid. Fine. So for you, you don't have to feel this way. But this is the way I'm feeling. And we don't do that. We never validate the person's feelings. And we say, why do you feel like that? It just makes it even worse now. Not only do I feel rotten, you'll cause me to feel even worse. Because you don't validate that I have a right to feel this way. Right? Because we try and intellectualize, if such a word exists, our emotions, and you can't. That's why the emotions are called yes. It's to do with me. Nothing to do with the facts. It's me, it's myself, it's the way I feel. So it's yes, it's something. It's my feelings. The intellect deals with the facts. It's the facts, my feelings. If the facts don't agree with the feelings, that has nothing to do with anything. Right? Everyone understand? Therefore, if let's say you can have, I'm giving you extreme cases, right? I'm giving you extreme cases. But we all have intellect and we all have emotion. Every single one of us, right? Some people have friends, maybe who are more intellectually orientated, and some are more emotional orientated. So let's say you have a friend who is more intellectually orientated. You don't go to him for support. He's not going to give you support. He'll give you solutions. Again, it depends where they are on the scale. You understand? I'm putting everything in black and white, but no one's black and white, right? But you definitely have people who are more intellectually orientated. And if everyone can think of it, right? They're not the people you're going to go to be able to get support, because he's not going to give you support. He'll give you a solution. However, if you have a friend of yours who's more emotionally, he'll give you the support you need. So that's so hard, that's difficult. I understand how you feel, stuff like that, right? But you don't want to go to him for advice, because you feel so strongly with you. Why can't he give you self-advice? Because he's so emotionally involved in it. The more if he's the same as you, emotionally involved, so he can't help you. He's in the same situation as you. He can cry with you, or she can cry with you, but she can't help you. Everyone understand? Am I clear or not really? The more the emotion person is with you, the less they can be objective outside of you. They're very, very good friends. He just can't give you advice because he's feeling your pain so much. The same reason why you can't give yourself advice, they can't give you advice. It's a great friend, but if you're going to go to that friend to ask for advice, they're going to muck it up. The same the other way. If you have a friend who's more intellectually biased, more intellectually orientated, so it's a great friend for advice, and they might care about you the same. Again, there's nothing to do with how much they care for you, how much they love you. It has nothing to do with it. It's the way they experience the world. If you have a friend who's more intellectually orientated, he experiences the world through the intellect, so he can give you advice. And he cares for you as much as the other friend. Just he doesn't experience the world that way. Right? So that's the intellect, and that's the emotional side. When we bring up kids, we focus a very lot on values. What values are you going to give to your kids? What's right and what's wrong? I hope this is right, this is wrong. But in truth, like we said, the example of the drugs, is that we don't focus enough on giving emotional values. In other words, how are you going to deal with the test when it comes? Most people know what's right and what's wrong, but they're not given the emotional capacity to deal with the problem. A child is unfortunately brought up in a broken home or in a home which was rocky or whatever it was. They might have all up there what's right and what's wrong, but he can't deal with it if he hasn't got self-esteem to be able to deal and say no. If he hasn't got self-awareness to know his strengths and weaknesses, he's going to muck it up. Right? Even though he might know what's right and what's wrong. We're so focused giving our children what's right and what's wrong, we don't stop and think, that could very well be. But the way we deal with it on a day-to-day basis is in our emotions. In other words, everyone knows shouting at your wife or your husband is wrong. So why do people do it? Because at the time, he got stressed, she got stressed, and maybe for legitimate reasons. But, I got stressed, fine. The person who doesn't shout is the one who says, this is a stressful situation. This could get out of hand. Let's stop and slow down. Let's wait. That's somebody who's aware of his emotional capacity. He knows that he might get angry. He knows that he doesn't do well with stress, let's say. And he knows from his head it's wrong to shout at his wife. So as he sees the situation coming, he's aware. And he says, let's stop the conversation now, go out for 10 minutes and carry on. But we don't do that. If you haven't got this, it's just like, bang, you react. You come home, hard day work, your wife's been home, and she's had a hard day, she says something, you go, what did you say? Bam, and you react. You know what's right and what's wrong, but you don't have the emotional ability to deal with it. You're not aware of your emotions, and you don't have the emotional capacity to deal with it at that time. So, in the 7 emotional triangles, there are 2 triangles from those. In other words, the first 3 are intellectual. The reason why that is intellectual, emotional, functional. The reason why the first is intellectual is because the mind has to guide the emotions. If your mind does not guide the emotions, then what are you going to do? You're going to react through your emotions, right? If you're walking down the road and somebody comes and hits you on the head, straight away like this, it's an emotional reaction for a man, right? Straight away, bang, right? That's emotional reaction. The intellect stops and slows down, right? And that's how we live our relationships, and that's why we always have friction backwards and forwards. So the first thing one has to understand is the reason why the intellect is on top is because the first thing you have to know is the intellect. The intellect has to guide the emotion. Then comes the emotion. And then, underneath that is what we call the functional triangle. Where would you put the intellectual? Which part of your head? I'll just give it. The intellectual is put in your brain, right? The intellectual is in your brain. In other words, the Kabbalah says that all of these, we have 3 levels of consciousness, and they exist within our body. Our body is a small world. In our world, we have everything which we're going to speak about in the next 10 is all corresponds to parts of our body, because the body is a world. It's our world, and within that sits the neshama, the soul. So where's the intellect? In the brain. Where would you put the emotional? Chest? The heart. In the heart, right. Where would you put the functional?
The hands.
No, hands are not counted. It's only this part is counted as parts. Yeah, so the liver. The liver is a functional part of the body, right? What's the word in Hebrew for brain? Moach. What's the word for heart? Lev. Lev. And the word for liver is kaved, right? If you have them in line, then what you end up with is mem for moach, lamed for lev, And kaf for kaved. Melech. Spells melech, kingship. When you have your emotional triangles aligned the right way, the way it's supposed to function, in other words, the way you live through your experiences are, something happens to me, whether it's unfortunately a tragedy, or maybe even if it's a good thing, right? The way I deal with it is first, my intellect tells me what to feel, what's right and what's wrong. Then I feel that emotion, then I do the functional. I haven't got time to go in the functional, but then I do the action. If you do the action without the emotional and intellect forethought, you end up mucking it up. Like the person, and there are people like that, who are like big doers. Just do it, right? For instance, let's say this is a phone. The intellectual triangle, you've got to make a phone call which is very awkward. Have I had this? Very, very awkward phone call. So the intellectual guy who's a bit more oriented towards intellect does the following. He picks it up and he goes, I've got to make the phone call. Then he goes, it's probably not the right time though. I've got to make the phone call. Maybe it's middle of eating. Wait, the phone call. Wait till tomorrow. Why tomorrow? I have more time. He's intellectualizing it. He'll never do it. He'll never get there. Because he's intellectualizing, he'll never get that. In an extreme case, right? But even on a bit of less, if you're a bit intellectually orientated, then you'll pick it up, maybe do it at the end. But the thought waves will be like that, right? The emotional triangle does the following. They pick up the phone and say, I'm going to make a phone call. And they go, I don't feel I can do that now. You know, let's say this person lost a parent, unfortunately, God forbid, right? So you pick up the phone and goes, I have to feel it. I can't just call up and give over information. I have to feel for the person. I'm not some just information desk over here. I'm at the right time when I can really be with the person and feel for that person and feel their pain, right? You know what I'm talking about? The third one does the following. Picks up, hello, you know these people? Just do things. What happens with these people? So like, I wish I could do that. He goes, well, just do it, here's the phone. I can't on the phone now, I don't feel it, on the intellect, all that business running out of minds and the heart and everything, right? Because the intellect is the thinker, and the middle is the feeler, and the third one's the doer. He just picks up and does. What's the difference? He's the kind of guy who goes, okay, we gotta go visit the sick. We're gonna visit the sick. Right? He goes to the hospital, and he walks in, and he goes, boy, do you look ill. Because he hasn't thought about it. He hasn't intellectualized, he hasn't thought about it, what to say. He just, we're going to do a command, a mitzvah. We're going to go visit the sick, right? The emotional person will go there and feel it and go there and say, I feel so bad for you. The intellectual person will come up with his line, whatever he'll say. But he's thought about the process. He's thought about the action before he does it. So true on one side, it's hard of him to do the action, but when the action gets done, it's more complete. The doer is not. So the doer has to learn to have the emotional and the intellect. The intellect has to learn the emotional and the functional, and the emotion has to learn the intellect and functional, because the way it's supposed to be is intellect, emotion, functional. If you don't do it that way, then what happens? You read it backwards. Kaf, lamed, mem, kalem, destruction. That's what it reads. Why? Because most pain, especially nowadays in the world, is because of relationships that have gone sour. Whether it's a boyfriend and girlfriend, whether it's a wife and a husband, whether it's a parent to kid, kid to parent, right? Most of the pain nowadays is from relationships that have collapsed, totally collapsed. In Israel, it's a bit better, but in America, where divorces are at least 50-60%, and the family doesn't exist, here we still have parents and brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts, whatever it is, right? People are, but I deal with my guys in Asia, so what? Mother, father, uncle, nothing. A total breakdown of relationships. And especially now, everyone just WhatsApping and emailing, and everyone, no one even speaks to anyone anymore, right? So no one even has any more friends and everything, right? To relate to somebody in a way where you appreciate that person. To have a relationship with your wife, a wife with a husband, where you're prepared to incorporate that person within you. So to do the first two emotional triangle, which is the main primary emotions. On the right side is chesed. On the left side is gevurah. Now again, this is in the emotional triangle. There's three triangles. In the emotional triangle, right, like we said, in the intellectual triangle you have chokhmah, bina, v'dat. In the emotional triangle you have chesed and gevurah and tiferes. Chesed and gevurah is every emotion that you will feel, that your primary drives, your primary urges, it's in the subconscious. It's what makes you do everything. What does it mean? The person who's chesed, again, these are not negative or positive. Each of these can come out negative All positive. It's a drive which was implanted by you, by God. Some people are oriented to the right, and some people are oriented to the left. The right person is a person who can deal with people. His chesed means he has no boundaries, no parameters. He wants to deal with people, push outwards, expand, right? At the same time, he's chaotic, disorganized. Because again, there's no boundaries, no parameters, right? The Gevurah person is the guy who lives within a schedule. He's within himself, he's in control, right? For instance, the case with the drugs and say no to drugs. It could be the reason why he said no is because the Gevurah guy says, I don't do that. And the chesed person says, I also don't do that, but I want to connect to the people, or everyone's doing it, I feel bad, because they naturally connect to people. It's harder for them. I'll give you an example. I have two kids. I have actually a bunch of kids, but my two oldest kids, right, is Nechama, my daughter, who's totally chesed. I'm Gevurah, my wife is chesed, right? So, I'll give you another example. I don't lose my keys. I do not lose my keys. They're in my pocket or my drawer. They don't go anywhere else, right? I lost my keys once. I'm sitting on the chair like this, and I'm thinking, my wife goes, what's wrong, y'all? I say, I lost my keys. So my wife's chesed, right? She goes, it'll turn up. I say, no, we're not doing that. I said, I need to know where my keys are. I'm sitting there thinking for 20 minutes. She goes, well, you'll find them. I said, I need to know where they are. I need to know where they are. Where are my keys? And eventually, I'm thinking for 20 minutes, and I think, I know, I left them in the basement. I went, I got them, and God, I got my keys back, right? My wife loses the keys the whole time. She comes home, it's any flat surface, bang, bang, anywhere, right? When we renovate the house, no flat surfaces. The ironing board comes out, fold it straight back in the cupboard. I don't want to see the ironing board out. I leave it there for 24 hours with my wife and my daughter. Things start piling up. I said, just put it away. Now, me being Gevurah, so I don't understand it. So I said, look, Nechama, come. You walk in, right, with the bag, pick out the bag into the cupboard. And she goes, why do I have to do it now? I said, that's the mistake. You do it now. But she doesn't get it because she's chesed. So she doesn't get it. Now my son Menachem, he's Gevurah. He's like black and white, bang on, right? An extreme case. And they get together and it's explosive. Which happens like on a daily basis. So like, I was trying to explain to him, I said, Menachem, you have to understand that he said, Nechama's stupid. I said, she's not stupid. She knows it's wrong, she's doing it anyway. That's stupid. If you know it's wrong, you're doing it. I said, no, she's chesed. For her, it's not the same. Because why not? I said, she doesn't think that way. Exactly, she's not thinking, it's stupid. I said, no, she thinks differently. That's not called thinking. If you thought, you'd realize what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. Now, so for my kid, Menachem, right, rules are rules. In school, rules are rules. You have to be the 8 o'clock, he's the 8 o'clock. To my daughter, 8 o'clock means don't sleep until 8:30. Right? It means around 8 o'clock. So every day she goes rushing out and oh my God, I'm so late. And she rushes out and Menachem goes, but you knew it's 8 o'clock. It was 8 o'clock yesterday and the day before and the day before. Work it out. To her, it's not in, the rules are not in it's not a wall. To him, it's like, boom, there's a rule. To her, it's like, there's a rule, whatever. Right? You ever had an appointment with someone? And he's like, okay, I'll see you 7 o'clock outside the restaurant. So when I'm told that, I'm there 7 o'clock. Because if you would say 7:05, I'll be there 7:05. 7 o'clock is 7 o'clock. So you ever had this? Where you're sitting out in the restaurant, let's say waiting for the person, and they come 7:05, 7:10, 7:15, 20, no one's there. And you're going like, what the heck is going on? 25. And then 7:30, you walk in, hello, how are you? And you go, what do you mean, how are you? You know what time it is? 7:30. What time did we say? 7 o'clock. There you go, you don't even admit it. What do you mean? 7:30. What do you mean 7 o'clock? You don't respect me, you don't respect my time, you have nothing to do, I need to go to the gym, I missed the work, I missed the job, why can't I be on time? And they go like, whoa, just half an hour. You ever had, this relates to anyone, this I'm saying? Or is it just me? Right? And like, now, my brother-in-law was like this, and he used to come an hour late to Friday night, and I would say, tell me, he's an hour late. Do you want me to blow him up now or something? And like, we set a time, I told him the time. And she goes, just let it go. It took me time to let it go and say, that's just the way he is. He's chesed. The person who's come 7:30, when you say 7, it doesn't mean, like for me it's hard to understand this, but this is the way it is. It doesn't mean 7. It means 7-ish, just not 8. It means we'll try to get that around 7-ish. So you're sitting there stewing and thinking that the guy's disgusting, malicious, vile, doesn't care about me, doesn't respect me as a person. He didn't think anything. He's just it's not 7 o'clock, this is 7 o'clock, you know? That's what it means. That's chesed and gevurah. When you understand the differences, then the friction goes down. If you don't understand the differences, so you think the way I think the way I think, therefore whoever doesn't think like me is nuts. So therefore the reason you came later is because you knew it was 7 o'clock, you decided that you don't care about my time, and therefore you came 7:30. Well, you know what? I don't care about you! And I walk out. But if you know that it's not like that, it's just that it doesn't, that chesed people, it doesn't mean that. Right? It's just, hello, how are you? They're disorganized. That's what it means to them. But when I walk into a room full of people, my son walks into a room full of people, he gets nervous. To the Chama, it's a party. 100 people, doesn't know anyone. Whoa, let's go. My son would sit in the corner. Now, my job as a parent is to tell Menachem to bring him more towards the chesed. This is where we think you channel. We can change it. You stay in your orientation, but you can change. I have to train Menachem to be more chesed. Oh, he's going to flop as a husband. And I have to train the Chama to have more gevurah because you're going to be flop as a wife. You can't have chaos in the house. Husband wants to come home to some sort of organized situation, right? I have to teach that to them being a parent. But he has to stay in his gevurah. I can't say, it's wrong to be like that. The fact that he's truthful, the fact that he's black and white is a good thing. He has to, with that, he has to develop his chesed side. What happens when it goes wrong? And with this we'll finish. When it goes wrong, I'll tell you what happens when it goes wrong. There were two sisters who never, unfortunately, their mother was not well, mentally not well, right? And it was 25 years ago, even more, and it wasn't diagnosed because they never had the ability then. And had a whole bunch of siblings, right? She was the oldest and the second oldest. The oldest used to come down every day, and because she wasn't well, they used to fight, the husband, the mother and father. She would come down every day and pick up things from the floor that they'd thrown at each other. A 7 or 8 year old child, right? It's terrible. But she said, look, I can't have everyone coming down here. She was 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. I can't have everyone, all the other kids are going to come down. She can't just leave it like this. So she used to go and pick it up. She's an amazing girl, an amazing person. I know this person personally. Incredible person, right? The sister wanted to do the same thing. But she couldn't do it. She would go down, burst into tears, and run back up again. Run back upstairs, and she couldn't, she was bawling with tears. I met a girl 15 years later through her husband. I knew her husband, and so we were talking. And the husband told me that she felt so guilty. She says, I know my mother's not well. I know my father's having a very hard time, right? Very, very hard time. And I'm so selfish that I can't go downstairs and pick up things off the floor to make it a bit easier. I'm so self-centered, so egoistic. And she felt guilty. And that guilty stewed inside of her. Stewed inside, she felt guilty, she felt she was rotten. Eventually she got married. And after 10 days, she burst into tears. And he was like, what's happening? What's wrong? And he told the whole thing. So I spoke to the girl and I said, you're making a mistake. I said, you are chesed and she is gevurah. Meaning that when your sister came down the stairs and picked up the plate, it was a plate. When you're chesed and you pick up a plate, you pick up the plate, and when you pick up that plate, you see your mother crying. You see your father shouting. You see your mother throwing the plate at your father. That's too painful for you to bear. Your sister just picks up a plate and puts it on the table, right? It's not your weakness, it's your strength. Because I said to her, I bet you, who was one who hugged all the other kids when it was difficult? She goes, yeah, that was me. My sister couldn't do that. Because she's a gevurah. She was a little kid. They never couldn't develop the other side. We're little kids at the time. I mean, they went through the whole way through the childhood, but they never had the chance to develop it, right? So the girl, so she thought, and she was an amazing girl, she picked it up, and she was guilty. No, your guilt is your strength. The fact that you're chesed, you have to use your chesed to be able to deal with it. One more story, which was in Australia. Happened to a lady called Lindsay from the Gold Coast. Yeah? She, unfortunately, had 2 not well children. They were both with cerebral palsy, right? And she's talking to this life coach, whatever. And he says the following to her. She says that she was gambling, she was on drugs, and alcohol, right? She stopped all 3. She's saying that I stopped all 3. I'm left with a $250,000 debt for my gambling. She says, I feel overwhelmed. My marriage is collapsing because of the 2 kids and stuff like that. And she says, I'm fighting the whole time to deal with the situation of, she has to administration to get the 2 children into special schools and special teachers, and it's an ongoing thing, getting grants and stuff like that. She's a nurse. And he says to her, I can see from who you are that you're a nurse, you want to give. She goes, that's right. He says, I think even she was suicidal. I'm not even sure she was, I think she was suicidal, I'm 100% sure. And he said to her the following, he said to her, you're using the wrong part of you. She says, he didn't know about this chesed and gevurah thing. She was a chesed person. But she was trying to control more and more of her life to try and give the best for her kids. And it was depressing her because she was crushing her chesed side. And she is chesed. And if you're chesed, you need to express that chesed. Your happiness can only come when you express your side. Yes, you have to also get the other side. It has to be, balance. But your strength is your side. If you're chesed, that is your strength. He said to her, stop trying to be the gevurah person of administrating and working everything out and controlling everything. Yeah, just express your love. Chesed is love, right? Express your love to your kids. Use your side to give to your kids. Don't use the other side and stress yourself out. Use your chesed side and love your kids to bits. Let your husband work it out. Right? And they worked it out eventually. And as she expressed her chesed side more and left the gevurah side, the administrating, went up to the husband, she was more in tune with herself. And although it was very still challenging, but when you deal with the challenge with your strength and not with your weakness, it's much less stressful. You don't feel overwhelmed because I have the ability to be able to do it. I have the ability to be able to do something here. I can control something. I can still love my kids even though they're not well. Right? And they interviewed her a year later and she was saying that it's challenging, but thank God it's so much better. She spends time with her kids and she loves them to a bit and stuff like that. And her husband stepped in to help with administration, fighting the schools, whatever it was, right? But our happiness comes from expressing the soul that is within us. And if you have a soul oriented to the right, that is what you have to express. If it's to the left, that is what you have to express. And that is what gives you happiness. Any questions?
What is the difference between the Binah and the functional triangle?
Binah is in the brain. The function is in the action. The functional triangle is Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Quick example. Are you married? So if you're married, when you get married, you realize that sometimes you want to say what you should say, and you shouldn't say it. And sometimes you don't want to say something, and you should say it. Right? Chesed and gevurah is our emotions, and the function is a supportive triangle. It supports the emotions. So let's say you're feeling chesed, and you want to love somebody, but there's an obstacle. How do you overcome that obstacle? Sometimes you have to push through. Right? You know you love the person, you're not feeling it right now, so you push through with the relationship. And the emotion will come again. Sometimes you have to back off. Right? I'll give you an example. There was a lawyer, right, who was very ambitious, right? And she worked her way up into the company. So she became the assistant to the senior partner. She was 32, she was a Beis Yaakov graduate, which means like Orthodox things, but she wasn't married. And then she was suggested a shidduch, a date, whatever, with a guy, and she went out with him, whatever, and she got married, and he had 2 kids. She wanted to express her love to these kids. She said, I'm going to be the best mother for them. But she did it the same way as being a lawyer. What do? You work hard, you keep on going. You have an obstacle, push through. Again, difficult, push through again, right? Till you succeed. Work till you succeed, right? But it doesn't work like that with relationships. And they pulled away from her. And she couldn't understand it. The more they pulled away, the more she worked hard. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And again, like a whole pressure cooker in there. And the husband said, whoa, Shani, sit down a second. What are you trying to do? He was like, I'm trying to make these children love me. He says, you can't make them love me. But it worked when there was a lawyer. He goes, step back. Sometimes to get an obstacle, you push. Sometimes you step back. Let it go. Step back. Just be nice. Don't have any ambitions. Just let it go. And she let it go. And she managed to do it. Netzach and Hod are the 2 ways we deal with the emotion. So you have chesed, which is love and all that stuff. You have gevurah. But those we feel automatically. That's who we are. When we come along an obstacle, that's where the challenge is, right? You come home, your wife said something to you, and now you feel upset with her. What are you going to do? Shout back? Or are you going to say, I'm not going to say anything? That's hard. You pull away. For instance, someone's dieting. There's 2 things you do. There's, first of all, you stop eating the whole cake. You only have a piece or 2. Not the whole thing. Right? The second thing is you go to the gym. Stopping eating is hard. I step away. I don't do anything. I don't do something. To let my diet exist, I step away. To let my love exist, well, I came home. I'm stressed and I know my wife's stressed. The baby's been crying all day and all night. I don't say anything. I step away. I say, it must have been a difficult day for you. Sometimes, though, you have to use the other way. You have to push. You want to accomplish something. You have to push. I'm speaking here because I had to push. I was terrified the first time I spoke. I didn't eat for 24 hours. I spoke in English the first time. I didn't eat. I said, what am I doing this for? You're nuts. My wife said, what are you doing this for? You're nuts. My kid said, you're nuts. Everyone said, you're nuts. Well, I've got feeling told me, keep on going on. You keep on going. I did it the first time. It was absolute hell. You know what I mean? But I pushed through because he told me and I encouraged him and he told me to do it. But sometimes you say, no. You understand? Especially with relationships. You gotta, if you make a mistake, you ever gone to somebody and said, what can I do for you? And you try and push and they say, just leave me alone, and you try and push more. They say, leave me alone, and you try and push more, and they say, will you get out of my face? You ever had that? That's called netzach, using too much netzach. When they say get out of my face, it means step back. You care about the person. Sometimes you have to step back, and sometimes you have to be with the person. You have to gauge the person. If it's a good friend of yours, sometimes you know, here I should step in. Tell me what's wrong, I'll help you. Somebody's saying, this is not the right time. Step back. They're both there because you love your friend. They're both there to express your chesed, your love for the person. But they're supporting the love. If you get your netzach and hod wrong, you're going to kill the relationship. You'll say what you shouldn't say, you won't say what you should say, and it'll just be a total failure. Right? Relationships dissolve in the functional triangle, not in the emotional triangle. The emotional triangle is how we feel. When you're feeling all lovey-dovey, it's very nice to be nice to your wife. It's when you wake up in the morning and you're feeling disgusting and you don't feel so lovey-dovey, then you have to use a functional triangle to express your love. It's to express the love, it supports the love. In the Kabbalistic thing, the netzach, this is, the right is chesed and the left is hard, is gvur. The legs are netzach and the support triangle of the legs, they support the whole body. You support the relationship through the way you deal with the functional triangle. Understand? Yeah.
Okay. Question. First, what's the 10th thing?
Malchus. Malchus is the ability to, Malchus is, you know, some people really get all the feelings right and they open their mouths and that's it. It goes pear-shaped. It goes really badly wrong. You know what I'm trying to say? Huh?
Did they
They don't know how to express it. They feel it and they care for the person. I really have to go into all 7 and work each one how it works. I haven't got time for that. But sometimes people feel things very strongly. And they really care. And they really do legit care. And they empathize. But they just don't know how to express it in the real world. Malchut is how it's expressed in the real world. In a short, it's a whole class in itself.
And then, how can I utilize my chesed side to be on time and organized?
So you can't. But what you have to do is you have to learn. You have to listen to this. You have to learn to incorporate gevurah. Me and my wife, for instance, I'm gevurah and she's chesed. My chesed has gone up a very, very lot because I'm gevurah, but because I incorporate her.
You just have to force yourself to.
It's not force yourself. It's. You have to be happy with yourself. In other words, you should be happy that you see, if you're not happy with where you are, you think you're a failure because you can't be organized, right? Then what happens is you're not organized, and how old are you? And things. They feel rocked inside. So you know what, I'm just go get lost. You're never going to incorporate anything. You have to say to yourself this, I'm chesed, and that's great. It's a strength that I have. I have to incorporate gevurah within me. Because I have to be able to functional, and you can. But you never leave chesed. You just try and incorporate a bit, right? So what you do is you do small work. That's not going to get very far. What you have to do is you have to incorporate little acts at a time. Right? So like I'm gevurah. I live in a schedule, completely in a schedule. My mind works according to the clock. Right? Some days I'll just...
I'd love to be like that.
You wouldn't. You wouldn't because you want to be a chesed. You only want to be because you're gevurah. You want to be a chesed. For me, it's difficult for me to empathize with people, for instance, because I'm a gevurah person. I'm in myself. Right? To a certain degree. My wife just gets it all. I have to learn to deal with that. Over the years I have. I'm an older person. Right? I'm already 38. I'm old. So therefore, as I learn, you go more and more and more. Yeah? You don't want to be gevurah. You want to be yourself. Judaism always says, you want to be yourself, but you want to be the best self you can be. And that is to take your chesed and use it the best thing possible, but to incorporate a bit of gevurah within it. When I told you about my son Menachem, I don't want him to lose his gevurah. Because his gevurah is a huge strength. When he learns a halakha, in the book, whatever, he's not budging from it, right? That's it, bang, because it's a rule, solid, it's a wall, right? But he has to learn a bit of chesed. To my daughter, a rule is a rule. Try to do it. Try your best. We do it. We put in the effort. You understand? So it's not the same. It's not the same brick, right? But your strength is chesed. She can deal with people like if there's a whole lot of people over here, she can do it no problem. My son would be just sitting in the corner and say, Dad, take me out of here. Get out of here. That's not good. Chesed these are not negative and positive. It's the way, it's just the raw urge. You can choose to have a negative or positive. So you can you should try and incorporate gevurah, but not at the expense of your chesed. You understand? Thank you very much.